10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Roger, Tower.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. It is Monday, March 30th, 2026. I'm joined today by Monk Yun Rou, author of, looks like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is this your 9th book, sir?
I think there's more like closing in on 30 of them by now.
Wow. Because I looked at we won't talk about all of those, but
yeah, some of them were in my birth American name. That's why it's confusion. But yeah.
Okay, so we, The Revelation is the latest work, but I would like to talk about your, what led up to The Revelation, and maybe talk about some of your, a few of your other books.
So I have quite an entertaining story about this book. I've never had an experience before or since like the way this one came about and what happened to it. But I wrote this book back in 1990. I was working in Hollywood as a screenwriter and adapting some of my books to film. And I was working with some very big name directors out there, and one of them mentioned to me that I might try sci-fi, and he and I were working on something else, but I said, well, I grew up, I loved sci-fi, I've always been fascinated by UFOs and aliens and all that stuff. He said, well, I think you do a good job of it. So with that impetus in mind, I started to research the UFO phenomenon as it was back in 1990. As you know better than I do, I'm sure, things have drastically changed since then, and it was pretty lunatic fringe back then, and now it's lunatic fringe if you don't believe it.
Yep.
In any case, I went to conferences in Vegas and tinfoil hat things, and I went out to the Hopi Mesa and looked at the stone stone artwork that was dated 1,000 years old, showing craft coming down and people with bubble heads and all that stuff, and I became convinced. This was around the time that Whitley Strieber's books and John Mack's books were out there. I became convinced. I had no idea what was really going on, but I was very certain that the people who were telling these stories themselves deeply believed that these things were true and had happened to them. And that was the takeaway. Anyway, I worked for 2 years on this book, The Revelation. And one morning, so I worked on it on spec. I wasn't being paid, thinking maybe I'd sell it to Hollywood after. And one morning I woke up and I turned on my computer and I got a message on my little laptop. It said, bad disk.
Yeah.
And there was no book.
Oh.
And remember that backups and the internet and all that stuff wasn't so much then. And I took this laptop around Los Angeles to various computer stores begging people to help me save what was thousands of hours of work. And, one smart-ass guy said to me, have any friends in the FBI? Maybe they could get it back for you. We can't help you. And, wow. And so I had to deal with the fact that this huge piece of work, those 600 manuscript pages, 134,000 words, 2 years of full-time work without pay, was gone. And for years after that, I mourned the loss of this book. I raised my young son with stories, bedtime stories about excerpted from this book about my home planet and all this different stuff, and how I'd come to Earth in a bubble. And anytime anyone mentioned writing sci-fi to me, I would say to them, say that to me again and it'll be our last conversation.
Yeah.
So it was very, very traumatic to lose this book. In in 2024, my mom passed, and I joined my siblings and went to her house to clean things out. And there, on the floor of a closet in a cardboard box, were 600 manuscript pages printed out, and on top was a note that said, "Mom, I don't trust computers. Please, please stick this somewhere safe."
Wow.
And I had forgotten in the trauma of it. I just didn't remember doing that.
Wow.
And I didn't do it right at the end, but I did it when the book was complete. And so I resurrected the book, and I called my publisher and I told him the story I just told you, and he went crazy saying, "That's a great thing. We got to get you on media with the story is almost as good as the book itself."
Yeah. That's awesome.
So that's how that came about.
You had some other books. I know it's the Monk of Park Avenue, a Mad Monk Manifesto. Got a lot of monk going on. What do we?
So a good number of years ago, I was ordained a Taoist monk in China by leave of the Chinese government, and I focused my work, which had begun in crime novels and other things with which I had some success, and some nonfiction books too, some of which sold well. I won a bunch of prizes and so on. I was a Yale literature major. But when I became a monk, I started to focus on the spiritual side of things. The Monk of Park Avenue that you mentioned is a memoir of my path in martial arts and Chinese philosophy. And then recently, and I wrote a book when I risk offending anybody listening or you, because I don't know anybody's politics. But when I began to see certain things going on in the world and in our country, I got very agitated. And I wrote a book called The Mad Monk Manifesto, which pretty much goes up your nose and tells you how it is about things and the way these manic murder monkeys that we are and what we're doing to each other and the planet and all that stuff. And of course, when I was writing that, there was always a little bit of a background idea to me that sometime aliens have got to come down and stop us, protect us from ourselves. That it's not a very Taoist idea because, we have to do the protecting. That's our own work. Nonetheless, I couldn't help but, wish for some divine, if you will, intervention that would stop us from our destructive behaviors. So anyway, I wrote the Mad Monk Manifesto, which sold very well and actually was quite a controversial book. Some people really thought I was heroic for writing it, and others thought I was a total crackpot and didn't like me at all. It was kind of a divisive work. But no other sci-fi until the resurrection of the Revelation.
Wow. And we had, let me see, The Jade Boy and Turtle Planet. What was Turtle Planet was intriguing. What was that about?
Yeah. So those are two that I like very much. Thank you for mentioning them. The Jade Boy is the story of a little jade robot with a golden head who was created by a disciple of what you could call the Muslim Leonardo da Vinci back at the time of Kublai Khan in China. And this little 9-year-old sized robot is gifted to a barren queen who can't have children by the inventor who has fallen for her. And the story follows their adventures in China, but also in the modern day, as the head of this little robot is found in a collection of a rich guy in New York City. And the daughter of the guy who passed away, the rich guy, the collector, takes this head and goes back to China to try to find the other parts of the body. So it's an historical novel, fantasy. It, of course, is AI. Yeah. It's an organic kind of AI. Turtle Planet, which you asked me about, I have a lifelong connection to turtles. Ever since I was a little boy, I really liked turtles. And now, of course, there's no such thing as a turtle that is not in some way endangered. They're helpless. They're on the ground. They're sensitive to environmental, contamination. They are sensitive to decimation of their habitat, and also, people pick them up and take them home and pull them out of the population. Anyway, they are the most endangered species of vertebrates, or group of vertebrates, I should say. And it makes me very sad to see that. So here in my home in Arizona, I actually work with a small number of critically endangered and in some cases extinct, gone from planet Earth, species of turtles to try to save them from disappearance. And I wrote Turtle Planet as a sort of a spiritual cry in their defense.
Do you have a pond where you keep these turtles? Do you have like an environment? Do you have them yourself?
I have them myself, and they're in my home. And I have a downstairs area where I keep them. And every morning, part of my ritual as a monk to work with compassionate action is to go down and try to take care of these little guys. And
That's
I managed to keep them alive, and including some that are really difficult. They're very delicate, and a lot of places and a lot of people who try, including some of the world's zoos, have not had good success. And for whatever reason, I have, maybe it's 60 years of keeping turtles might be the reason. But I kind of figured out how to do it. So I've set up here, I have a little pond, and I have some tanks and enclosures, and that's it.
That's fun. I love turtles. I was
Yeah,
just
me
at the
too.
San Diego Zoo last week. We saw a lot of that. And also in Balboa Park, they have the Museum of Natural History down there. And there's a lot of turtle stuff. My wife's aunt has a turtle that started out this big, and it's massive now. I mean, it's 40 years old.
Well, I worked at the San Diego Zoo in my young life, in my early career as a zoologist, or budding zoologist, and at the Bronx Zoo as well. And I took care of some of those giants in my day. And then when I lived in Florida for quite some years, I raised giants of my own in my backyard, and our son grew up riding them like kids ride a horse.
Yep.
They could fit in the palm of my hand, and they ended up 400 pounds.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're amazing creature.
They are. No turtles in the Revelation, though.
No.
Not in that book.
That's great that you're able to save the turtles, though. That's now it's motivated me to maybe put a pond in the backyard, and
Oh, good.
Well,
If you do that, you feel free to write me for advice on what
I will.
kinds to do and all that.
that is
Happy to help.
How many turtles do you have? Now we're off onto turtles, but how many you think you have? Lost
I don't
count?
know. It changes. They come, they go. Something, not that many really. Something like 30 maybe.
Do you release them back into their natural environment?
So unfortunately, the ones that really would need that to be done are ones where the natural environment is no longer suitable.
Oh,
So either it might have been destroyed, it may not be there anymore, or it may be that putting them back in that situation imperils them and leads people to go and grab them again. And some of the very, very rare ones are worth a lot of money in Asia. And so there's quite an incentive to
take
decimate
them.
their population. It's a difficult situation.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the Revelation. How'd you get into writing? I mean, I know you told me you wrote, is this something you've done all your life, or, is this,
My grandparents on my dad's side were Russian immigrants, and I studied the Russian language when I was a boy, so as to better be able to communicate with them. And I became quite entranced with the great Russian writers, Dostoevsky, Putin, Tolstoy, Lermontov, Gogol, and so on. And I guess I probably 9 years old, I realized that I wanted to be a novelist, and I pursued that. I had these other interests, but my way of making sense of the world is to tell stories, and that's how I integrate things. And I don't know that I would survive without indulging or engaging, I don't want to say indulging, without engaging my creative impulse. I think story is the way the world works. We all communicate and share through story. Who we are is a story. What we think we know is a story. Whether we are alone in the universe or not, I find that to be a preposterous idea, but some people think so. All of that, religious interpretations of reality, all of it, it's all story. And our religions are primarily story also. They are myths and legends which we have inflated to a position of great importance, but they're story. This happened, that happened, somebody did this, somebody did that. So I don't really know that there is a more important or more powerful thing in the world than story. And whether we are living a simulation created by aliens, if we are, that's a story too. Then we're living a story, somebody else's story. Either way, story is the transcendent thing.
Is the Bible a history book, or is it? Or what's your opinion? We don't know what for real, but is it a story?
So, at the risk of offending, I'll try not to do that. It is a questionably edited assemblage of short stories, and there is some absolutely brilliant and important and amazing content and lessons in that work. The historicity of it is another question. Whether any of those people actually lived. In the religion that I cleave to myself, I was raised in a Jewish home, but not a religious one. The Chinese religion of Taoism, or the philosophy, is purported to have begun 400 before the Common Era or so, maybe 500, around what we call the Axial Age, which was a period worldwide when a lot of important thinking and the Buddha and all that, a lot of new ideas were coming about. And the way it's human nature that the way we share and preserve a lesson or an idea is by putting it into story. So I don't know, and I know that certain people have beliefs and they would be offended by this, not my intention. But I think the important thing is not whether any of those people were real or any of those events were real. I don't think that matters. From my point of view, what matters is what is the lesson? What is the takeaway? What is the wisdom about how we can behave in this world, in our own lives, and with each other? And that's where our focus should be. If I had a time machine, I could go back and I could tell you, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, which is the famous book in my tradition, who wrote the Bible, whether there was a Jesus or a Moses, and on and on. And I'm not, of course, in any position to say about that. But I can say that what counts are the teachings.
Good point. Thank you. It's always a question I ask when I speak to some of the authors of what their opinion. We know this is just our opinion. You know, I remember I'm talking. I have a lot of tinfoil hatters that listen to this, and they think, you know, God is Jesus was an alien. You know, I get it all.
And
We get it all.
maybe that's right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that. You know, we are. It does seem that we are at a time now with the rate at which people are pressing for disclosure. It may be that we will find out the answers to some of that in our lifetime, if not in the next few years. I know it's very common to say it's going to happen in 2026 or 27 and so on. I read a lot of that stuff. And what is clear to me, though, is that something is obviously going on. There are just too many incidents and episodes that are taking place. Too many whistleblowers are coming out. My son, who's now a grown man and a scientist, you know, he rolls his eyes at me about these things.
Yeah.
But I'm almost feeling like it is more of a stretch to believe that we are alone than it is to believe that there's a universe full of life. And I will say, I guess it's pretty germane to this conversation. I have the misfortune to have contracted a very rare and fatal disease some years ago, and it went into my brain. It's a fungal disease, and it's not a curable thing. But I've stayed alive on some experimental chemotherapy, and perhaps because of my monk practices, my body has unusual resilience, maybe. In any case, I've passed away in the last 5 years 2 times.
Oh, wow.
And in the first one, after being resuscitated, I was in a coma for a while. And during that time, I had a vision. And I don't know what else to call it, really. It wasn't a dream. It was as real to me as is the experience of sitting here at my desk in Arizona talking to you on Zoom. And in that vision, I was shown there was someone along with me, and I was shown things. And I was shown the fate of the human race. I was shown what we were going to become, what is going to happen to us and other organic life on Earth. But I was also zooming through the cosmos like a comet, and I saw countless planets teeming with life. I didn't go down and, wasn't like
didn't go hang out.
We talked about earlier. Yeah, I didn't go down and meet everybody or anything, but I did. I was shown that the universe is full of planets, full of life, and so I suppose maybe these visions, maybe the experience of dying, what people report about near-death experiences. There are some common threads, but it may also be that we experience the things we want to experience or we have long believed to be true, and those are either validated or sometimes shattered. But after that vision, after that coma came before I rediscovered this book, The Revelation. And so I was re-prepped to engage this subject, if you will. And I wonder how much of a coincidence, hard to know exactly how the world works and what's going on. But it may be that, I found the manuscript for a reason, and that it's coming out now at a time when the whole world is opening to these things, and I had this vision, and to me all of this is connected. Now, of course, I would say that because I'm me, and I'm seeing the world, with the gray matter between these two ears, and I can't prove that, but it is my experience.
You had said that you saw what was going to happen to the human race. I mean, what
Yes, I
happens?
Well,
Now I'm curious.
Everybody wants to know. I've done quite a number of interviews about that since that day. So, in my zooming through the cosmos, in the company of this intelligence, now, I want to tell you that my companion in this, and again, this is not written in the Revelation, this happened many, many years after I wrote the book, although I did go back and edit and clean it up, of course. I'm going to refer to this companion as a curator. And I'm choosing that word. I would like to tell you it was Jesus or Moses or Buddha or Lao Tzu or Confucius or something. Nothing would give me greater pleasure than to tell you that, but I can't say that. What I can say is that I use the term the curator because I had the very clear sense that I was being shown things that this entity or this presence wanted me to see. And so again, I use the term curator because it's like if I gave a lot of money to a museum and I asked to have a tour, they would take me and show me sort of off-exhibit things that were relevant to my interests, and thank you for my philanthropy. I'm not a philanthropist. I don't have a lot of money to give to museums, but this is the experience of this vision. I was being shown things that were of particular interest to me. So one of the things that I was shown was a craft, and the craft was floating in deep space. I call it a craft because I don't know what else to call it. It looked like a giant, like a king crab leg.
Oh, wow.
And it was irregularly shaped, but it was miles long. And its surface was something like carbon fiber, but softer, a material that I didn't recognize. We may not have this material now. And inside of it, this craft that was so long, were the collective individual consciousnesses of the human race. And we were in an incorporeal state. I'm not sure how many other sentient beings that had been organic, like whales and chimps and whatever else, turtles, might have been in that craft. That really wasn't that clear to me. But what was clear is that this is the future of people. Now, in retrospect, I look back on this vision and I think, okay, that's AI. We've gone through whatever we go through, implants in the brain, and eventually, we are no longer carbon-based life forms, we're something else.
Right.
When I was shown this, I will confess to you, sir, that I was upset. I have, as I've just identified to you when we talked about turtles, I have a soft spot for the organic life on this planet. And I had a very strong negative reaction to being shown this. And it was a no, that I woke up from the coma.
No.
I became agitated, and that's when I came out of the coma. Looking back on it, even just after a few days lying there in the hospital, it occurred to me, number one, that I wish I had not reacted the way I did. Because if I had kept my mouth shut and hadn't been so violently opposed to what I was being shown, I might have learned more. Might have been shown more. The other thing that occurred to me is maybe I'm wrong, or was wrong, in thinking that this is a bad thing, because those incorporeal consciousnesses don't have suffering. There's no cancer, there's no heart disease, there's no brain disease like the one I've got.
Is it the soul? Is it like the soul? Maybe.
So, I don't know. What I can say is that the picture that I got was of beings that are not suffering. Now, they're not drinking or getting high or having sex or traveling or any other positive thing we can come up with. They're not creating symphonies, or maybe they are, but they're not physically suffering. So, lying there in the hospital, I thought after a few days, boy, maybe I was wrong in thinking that this is a bad thing. And of course, this speaks very much to the active debate about our future in AI now, and whether we're going to be replaced or supplanted. And is that a terrible thing? Is the end of the human race a god-awful thing? Or is it a wonderful thing? Does it mean that we won't be destroying the earth anymore, that we won't be killing each other and torturing and suffering? And I'm not wise or omniscient enough to know the answer to this, but I think it's a very interesting debate. And in fact, it's the subject of the follow-up to the revelation, which I'm working on now.
That's amazing. Yeah, it sounds like the soul almost. But and then I've talked to other people about the afterlife, about how the afterlife is, everything's good, and none don't have any problems. Sounds very much like you described.
So, I get nervous when we use the words good and bad about these things. Because, we have a certain moral and intellectual framework. And, if there are advanced aliens who are involved in our world in any way, they may not be guided and constrained in that way.
Right.
And it may be that some of the things that they do we would think of are evil or bad, and some of the things that we would think are wonderful. And I don't think I have no way of knowing if they would care what we think. That their frame of reference is very different. So, I don't know what I can say about the afterlife other than having passed away twice now. The second time was consequent to brain surgery and this insertion of this thing you see sticking out of my head. I had two massive heart attacks in the recovery room after that surgery. I guess I threw some clots or whatever, and I passed away. And they, my wife and son were present, and they tried to revive me with CPR, and it didn't work. And then they used the paddles to shock me back to life. And after trying 4 times, they declared me dead.
Oh.
And they stopped, and my family got really vocal and excited about that. So they tried a couple more times, and here we are.
I'm glad you made it.
Thank you. That time I didn't have any, things happened very quickly and violently, and I didn't have any vision or anything. I don't remember any of that.
Wow.
But I don't think, I do think that it is a continuum. My intuition is that life and afterlife and before life are a continuum we don't really understand. And whether, as has been suggested in some quarters, this is all a simulation, or whether there's something else going on that is beyond our ken, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it's hard
to say. I wish I knew.
It's really hard to say. Let's talk about the revelation, now that we've talked about everything else.
Everything else.
How did you, what research did you do to? Actually, we should probably talk about the characters and the story.
Sure, I'll do that.
Just fill us in on that.
So, I've long had this idea that the human race is evolving. And I was a science student as well as a literature student in my academic life many, many moons ago. And I studied evolution and evolutionary biology a little bit. My son is a luminous scientist now in that field, as I mentioned. I'm an amateur. But I find that evolution, I learned that evolution is not a steady, gradual process, but is punctuated by rapid changes that occur from time to time in the fossil record. So what you don't find, for example, is a little bud of a thumb and then a little bit bigger thumb. No, you find no thumb. Then you find a thumb. Now, of course, the little bit of a thumb had to happen, but what makes something take hold evolutionarily is an advantage that it confers, whether it's language, or the thumb, or the way we stand up and walk, and countless myriad other examples throughout the natural world that occur in response to changes in the environment. My hope is that the way we will avoid extinguishing ourselves and all other sentient beings on this planet, and I believe there are many, is that we will experience an evolutionary leap where relatively suddenly we will begin to see ourselves, who and what we are, differently and act accordingly. So we will stop doing the things we do to each other and to all the other living, breathing beings on the planet. So the Revelation is a story that is based on the premise that aliens have been here and visited here. The original title, working title of the book was Truck Stop Earth.
No.
And I had all kinds of visitors. Some people still like that title, but it doesn't quite capture the
fun.
Big picture the way the Revolution.
It's a fun title.
Yeah. So we've been watched, and maybe we are being watched now. And just like there's lots of talk about aliens interfering with our nuclear facilities, preventing global thermonuclear war that would wipe us out and wipe out the planet, they're watching, and I conflate two things in the story of the Revelation. One is a sudden leap in human evolution, where babies begin to be born that are different from us and are much higher minded and principled and able to do and see things that the rest of us can't. And the concomitant arrival of aliens who have been waiting for that. And because it's happening now, they're here and they make themselves known. And the way in which they make themselves known is, of course, the story of the book. And the central character, the protagonist, is a guy called Baron Poole, with an E on the end. And he runs remember this is set in 1990, so it was a talk show, not a podcast.
Yep.
But he was, a fellow like you. And he engaged all kinds of interesting topics. And his show was called Reflecting Pool. And he talked about how we can be better people and some politics involved. But it wasn't a show about aliens. He had a big audience and people liked to follow the things he had to say about how to live well. And I based it, some of that on the philosophy that I've studied all my life, the Asian stuff. Anyway, Baron Poole, at the beginning of the book, interviews the mother of a little baby who was born, and the mother suffered from AIDS, and the baby was born with AIDS, and the baby cleared the virus, which drew a lot of medical attention immediately. And the baby then began to evidence all kinds of other, what we would now call kind of superpowers, and it was very interesting. And this little baby, her name was Dawn. Dawn grows at an unnatural rate. So by the time she's 12 weeks old, she looks like she's 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so our hero is interviewing her mother. And he gets on an airplane after the interview. And while he's on the airplane, he sees a saucer-shaped craft, and the details of this will be available to your readers when they read, or to your listeners when they read the book. But Baron Poole is rescued from the crash by an alien. Everybody else dies. And this horrible tragedy kicks off his commitment to the revelation. And so the book follows the story of Baron and the little girl and other children who are born as the human race transforms into something else. And it involves government cover-ups and Baron's attempts to uncover things that are being withheld. It really couldn't be more timely.
Yeah.
It's like watching some of these congressional hearings now. But bear in mind that I wrote it 36 years ago.
That is wild. You foresaw the future.
I guess.
Yeah, we could use some help now, I think. The way things are going.
We definitely could use some help. And the danger, I'm torn a little bit by this, because the monk in me and the spiritual and philosophical and religious training that I have tells me that, we have to sort ourselves out, and that it's a dangerous proposition to wait for someone or something else to help us, because it takes the onus off us. We're the ones that are doing all this bad stuff, and we have to stop doing that bad stuff, whether it's war on the environment or war on each other, and so on, and so many other things. On the other hand, I also really do believe, which is why we're talking today and why I wrote that book, I really do believe that we are not alone, and that there are probably things beyond our comprehension, beings who are watching us, who are aware of what we're doing, and the evidence for this is mounting. And to me, it's a very fascinating time. And whether I can't disagree with you, that it would be great to get some help, but I also worry that we don't want to rely on anyone else to do our work for us.
Yeah, can we do it ourselves, though?
Well, so this is the subject of the revelation, right? Maybe we can't do it ourselves in the form that we currently have, and maybe evolution is a cultural as well as a biological thing. coming to see ourselves differently, which leads to behaving differently, is a possible answer. But it would have to happen quickly and globally in order to be in time, in my view.
Yeah, it feels like it's unraveling. It's unraveling pretty quickly right now, and
I think a lot of people feel that. I feel that too.
Yeah, it's goes from a skirmish to all-out World War III. That's pretty crazy.
Yes, and World War III is not the only problem. I mean, it's a big one. But, what happens? What do we become? Those of us who survive, if any do. What then? And, history teaches us that there have been quite a number of times when things have looked apocalyptic. I think right away of the Black Plague in Europe in the 1300s, when everything seemed to be unraveling even faster then than it does now. And yet, there are elements to things that are happening now, and some of this is technology, and some of it is revelation of our place in the universe. These are really, really important themes and questions, and I can't think of anything more interesting to write about or think about or talk about.
Yeah, it seems pertinent, that's for sure, to today's happenings. So the revelation. So anything else you'd like to... I know we can't talk about the whole book or nobody will read it. So
well, I hope everybody will read it. And I think, it's a kick-ass story, regardless of your position on what is or isn't going on in the realm of government cover-ups and visitation and so on. You don't have to believe one thing or the other to get a lot out of the story. As we discussed at the beginning of our conversation, story is supremely powerful, and it's the most engaging thing there is. And each one of us walks around all day, every day, living a story. And whether we're conscious of that or not, it doesn't matter. We're still doing it. So, this is an enjoyable book. Now one thing that we're up against, or I'm up against as a writer, is that people's attention spans have diminished with the internet and social media, and
yep.
people are used to, sound bites and just a very brief indulgences of their attention.
Yep.
What I can say about reading a book like The Revelation is that it offers real transportation to another reality. While you are reading that book, and I say this to all the potential readers out there who are listening, you are in that world. And I would like to think that when you come out of the world, you will be changed by it, by the experience of having been there and read the book. You'll think about things in a new way. You'll see them in a new way. I hope so. That's kind of my job as a storyteller, if not a monk.
That's awesome. What kind of research did you do? There's probably a lot of research, but how did you go about researching for the content of the book?
Well, so I mentioned that I took a lot of time to go to conferences and so on and meet people. I did have a really cool experience at the Hopi Mesa, at the first Mesa, where I went up to see the rock paintings of alien craft. It really is amazing to realize that this is not science fiction. This is, scientists go there and they carbon date these artworks to 1,000 years ago. And of course, there are much older ones. but this is just what was available to me on my motorcycle in 1990 to go from LA where I was working and, visit. So I asked the Hopi elders about these artworks and what they believed. Because, when you're standing there and you look at the art on a stone, you really, how can you deny? It's not a fake, it's real.
Yep.
And what do they believe about these things? And what I found is that they were not really very interested in talking to me. I regret to report that. And whether that was, just another LA boy came out to talk to them about their beliefs and so on, and they were jaded about it, or I wasn't a tribal member, or whatever the reason. They talked to me a little bit about their forebears, the Anasazi, and their relationships with extraterrestrials. But if I tried to dig any deeper, they clammed up and they asked me to leave.
Oh wow!
So they didn't hold me at gunpoint or anything. They didn't made it clear that they didn't really want to talk to me. Anyway, the Hopi have an entity called the Thunderbird. Sometimes, for those listeners who know Southwestern or indigenous lore, sometimes you see the Hopi are silver workers, some of them, and they make keychains and necklaces and so on with a representative of this sort of dragon-like bird, which is their protector, and it's part of their tribal lore. Anyway, as I rode away from the mesa, this is, 36 years ago now, I was riding along an empty desert road and on my motorcycle, and it was a clear, still day. And I was tooling down the road with the mesa behind me. No traffic on the road. Weather was fine. And all of a sudden, into my head came an image of this thunderbird, like I saw it in my mind's eye, a big creature. And I was blown off the highway.
Oh, wow.
Into the cactus and into the weeds.
Oh, no.
Never been able to explain this to anybody or account for it, because there was no weather, there was nothing to blow me off the road, and yet I was blown off the road, and there I was desperately trying not to fall over and end up impaled by choya and other things, And I had the distinct sense that this was them letting me know, don't come back here. At least don't come back.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk to you. And what the Thunderbird is, and what their relationship, if any, with any extraterrestrial or interdimensional entities or beings, far, far beyond my ken. I have no idea. And yet, just one more ingredient in the pot that tells me things are going on that I don't understand, that we don't understand. So if you like indulging that feeling and speculating about that and thinking about what the world really might be, then I commend you to read the Revelation.
Sounds good. Well, sir, Monk Yun Rou, we appreciate you coming on, talking about your books. As a reminder, you have many works. Would you say 30?
I don't know. I kind of lost track. I got 20 something, maybe 30 books. Some of them not published, but most of them published. When you go live with this, please send me a link so I can send it out to my people.
No problem, sir. Monk Yun Rou, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate the interview. Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome.
Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome comments, questions, or guest requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook. Listen to us wherever you get your favorite podcasts, Twitter and Instagram at Alien Probe Pod, YouTube and Rumble at Alien Probe Podcast. We also have a paid version on Patreon if you'd like to show your support. However, the content is free on all other platforms.